another Exit Rich podcast, and I'm really excited about this guest as well. This guest is what do we call us, Fradel? I know we're doing some business together, so
Friends, business partners, all of the above.
friends, business partners, all the above. So let me introduce Fradel pretty quick. Right now, I know you guys are going to love her because she is a visionary entrepreneur in the financial services industry. And I always tell my clients it's not how much I sell your business for, it's how much you walk away with, how much you actually keep. So she leads the development of entrepreneurs in the financial service industry as founder CEO of the World Changers. She leads a team of 350 licensed professionals. 350, that's a lot. How do you sleep at night? And then Fradel is passionate about financial education for all types of people, regardless of their social status or income. She has been featured in Forbes as a top financial security professional, featured on ABC as a financial expert. Her last speaking engagement was to an audience of over 20,000 people. Wow, I spoke in front of an audience of 1,000 at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, where she spoke about the need for widespread financial literacy. She was featured on Women's of Wall Street Journal and as a female in the space, she encourages and empowers women to enter and succeed in the financial arena. Fradell serves on the advisory board for a nonprofit, All for One, a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the lives of children. Wow, that's a subject near and dear to my heart. So, welcome to the show, Fradell. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, Michelle. Great to be here, and I'm excited about our conversation today.
Me too. And like I tell all my business owners, it's what you keep that's the most important. So
That's right.
let's kind of dive in. Tell our listeners a little bit personal, a little bit stuff about yourself. What were you like as a little girl? How did you get in this industry?
Well, that's some story. So I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I'm the oldest of 12 children. So anyone with children out there, I have four of my own, but if your kids ever misbehave, just think of my parents. But growing up in that environment, obviously money was always something that wasn't easy to come by. And I think that not only because of how many children there were, but just in general, when you have middle class income, it's just something that happens. And so growing up in that environment, I always knew I wanted more. I wanted to understand the money game, but I never really knew how I would get that information. And as I grew up, I really had interest in the design world, graphic design, fashion design. I was definitely a creative thinker. And so I thought that my path would be there. But as I started going into that realm, and I actually decided to move to California at the time to study fashion design, I looked around at the people that were further ahead in their career in that field, and it didn't fit where I wanted to be financially. And so I started looking around, and that's where I came into the financial industry. And it was game over. I really, once I understood what it was about and how impactful it could be, not only in my life financially as creating a business in that area, but also then empowering other people to be able to do that as well. It was something that I fell in love with and have never looked back for the last almost 20 years now. So, but in addition to that, growing up as the oldest of 12, I grew up in a Hasidic environment. It was very sheltered. So I did have to break out of that mold. And I think that while that was not an easy thing to do, it really helped me once I got into the business world because I was able to break out of the mold that is typical. I mean, Michelle, you know this because our industries have that similarity where females at the top in our industries are hard to come by. And so that's really something that I attribute to the way I grew up and what I had to go through to be able to get to that point. So it's exciting to meet someone like yourself as well, who is a leading female in their industry. And that's really where I'm very passionate about also helping women to be able to get to that place as well.
Yep, I am too. I'm in an industry that's 98% male dominated, so I get it.
Yeah.
And I love how you spoke about passion. 'Cause you're your passion, and passion is your passion, and passion is my passion too. But I said, look, I'll never make a living in it. I tried too.
Yeah.
And that's the And I said, look, I'll just go out and find something else is my passion, which is helping business owners save their business and exit rich. And
Yeah.
then I'll have money to go feed my passion, right?
Exactly. And you can always have your passion be a hobby, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be what makes you money. It
Yeah,
just depends on the lifestyle you want to live, and it has to match up.
1000%. So now you're based in Miami, right?
I am, although I
Okay.
am originally from New York. So moved to California, then moved back to New York, and a couple years ago moved out here to Miami.
Yeah. And you work with clients all over the world, or all over the United States, I should say.
All over the US, yes.
Okay. So, what are the top three business tips for business owners to keep more of the money they make? And so, there's two things, right? You want to keep more of the money you make when you're in business, and you have to be very careful because when you do run a lot of personal expenses through the business and everything else, it can be hard to get lending and it's hard to prove it to buyer to maximize value on a sell of your business. But you want to maximize strategies so you can keep as much and have these tax strategies as well when you're running your business. And it's really important when you go to sell your company.
Yes.
So, what are the top three
Yeah,
strategies?
I would say, there's a lot of things, right? And it depends who you ask, right? If you ask a CPA or if you ask someone like yourself that's looking at the exit, but keeping it really simple. And especially for people who are more in the startup stage of their business, or I would say within the first 3 to 5 years. Number one is know about your money. And I think that might sound very basic and very obvious, but it's really not, because I deal with business owners all the time, and many times they're focused on revenue, right? Gross revenue of what did their company produce. And while, of course, that metric is very important, when we talk about money you're going to keep, you can't forget about what the expenses are, right? What the tax obligations are, and even something like opportunity costs. So if you're focused only on gross revenue, you're not seeing those things. But if you dive deeper and really pay attention to, let's take expenses, for example, understanding what is going on underneath, right? What are the expenses? And that gives you an opportunity to minimize or eliminate some expenses that could potentially then give you more cash to keep.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. The second thing is, like I said, taxes. Understanding what you need to put away for your tax obligations, but also finding ways to minimize or even eliminate certain type of taxes through tax credits or different strategies that are available for business owners. Remember, the tax code was written for business owners, right? But you just have to learn the code and what applies to you. And so that's another area to really pay attention to, and not kind of just shove under the rug and go once a year to your CPA and have it be something you need to deal with, but really pay attention so you can keep more of that money. And the last is opportunity costs. Um, Understand that money not received today costs you money, right? Potentially in inflation, which is a hot topic today, right? Due to where inflation is. But the money you don't have today, right? What is it worth in a year? And then the other part of opportunity cost is investment. So what could your money that you don't have today have been earning you? And then it's just missing out on opportunity in general, right? Maybe it's to acquire another department of your business or expand. So those are just areas that I see a lot of times that business owners just not only delegate, but don't pay attention to, right? It's not the expectation that the business owner is always going to do all of those things, which they shouldn't. They're running the company. But make sure that the people you employ or you contract to do those areas are giving you very clear reporting so that you could be able to assess where are the areas that you can keep more money. And that's what I mean by know your money. Okay. So that I would say is number one.
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
second,
and I
yeah,
think that's really important because I deal with selling to companies, and I can't even begin to tell you how many business owners have no idea what the company's EBITDA is, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. They're completely clueless. They don't know what the net is. They've been running expenses, personal, non-recurring through their business for so long that they kind of forget. And I think it's really, really important. And one thing that we really discovered during the pandemic with our clients is everybody's trying to cut costs, right? And even if business owners are not going to always pay attention to your numbers, you need to have those KPIs, those key performance indicators. I like to have them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but you need to review your numbers once a month and look at what you can cut. And we did that with our clients. We went through the financials and said, look, do you really need a water fountain here? All of your people are virtual right now. Do you need to
Yeah.
pay this much for water every month? Do you really need to have, this cable TV right now? Do you really need to have this, that? And sometimes, the first thing that business owners want to cut is marketing, right? They want to cut marketing, which you don't want to cut marketing. You want to do an audit of your marketing and see what's working, what's not working, get rid of what's not working. And then you also don't want to cut how much of that money that you're putting away to savings
That's right.
and investing. So I think that's very, very important. And I really, hope to see more business owners paying attention to the bottom line, because at the end of the day, it's not the revenue. You can make $100 million and go home broke.
Exactly. No, and that's so true. And that brings me to my second one, which is putting away money. And there's a few ways you can do that, right? One that's very important is saving just for emergency funds, so that you're going into the least bad debt possible, right? Bad debt is the one that compounds and that you can't catch up with. Things like credit cards with high interest rates and things of that nature. But then also it's for retirement,
Mhm.
because retirement looks very different when you're a business owner versus an employee, right? An employee, even if you're working somewhere that you think you're going to be for the next 30 years and you're going to retire there, it's pretty simple. Whatever retirement plan is offered, 401k, pension, you participate, and so on. When it comes to a business owner, I think a lot of business owners think they're never going to retire. That's number one, right? Well, I love my business. I'm never going to retire. Well, that's great, right? But I don't even like the word
That's not great. That's a big mistake.
yeah. Well, great for them, but
Everybody's gonna
move on.
retire someday. We're gonna, we're living or dying. So
Exactly.
everybody's gonna retire sometime. And what I see often, Fradel, is that I get calls from the spouses, and it's typically the women that will call me and say, "My husband just died at the age of 42 from a heart attack. Can you sell my business?"
Oh, wow.
And he didn't plan for his exit, so he doesn't really have a business. He has a job that he goes to work at every day. When he died, the business died. And
Wow.
so it really is important to plan that exit from the beginning, because you never know when your time comes. And
That's
you really
right.
got to set your loved ones up for success so you can sell that biggest asset. And it's typically the business.
Exactly. And that goes along with what I was going to say, which is I don't even like the word retire. I think is having the freedom of choice. So at what point in your life will you have freedom to say I do want to work today or I don't? And in like you said, in the business aspect, it's selling, right? It's exiting in
Yeah.
some capacity. And I think I like what you just said, because it's exiting whether you're alive or not, right?
Right.
So your exit strategy can't just be if you're still running the company. What if you can't? What if there's something that takes place unexpected? So that's really true. Another thing I always say to remind people about saving for their retirement is that when it comes to retirement, no one is going to loan you money for you to retire. They'll loan you to start a business, right? To go to college, to buy a house, but no one's lending you money to retire. In fact, that's when they'll cut back all lending, right? You won't be able to get a mortgage or everything like that. So,
I
one
like that saying, nobody's going to lend you money to retire.
true. So who's left, right? Who's left that's going to deal with that? It's you. And you can't wait till the last second, because starting early allows you to actually put away less money through compound interest and weathering market fluctuations. But if you wait till the end, hopefully when you work with someone like Michelle, you will have a big exit, but you can't always rely on that, because I mean, we know the statistics of business, right? 30% of all businesses don't make it past the third year. I believe that's the one. But
Yeah,
there are,
that is the one now. It used to be, Fidel, that 95% of all startups will go out of business in the first 1 to 5 years.
mm,
Now the business landscape has changed dramatically. Now it's actually startups have a 70%, have a 30, only 30%. Let me say that again, guys. Only 30% of startups actually fail. When it's business owners that have been in business for over 10 years or longer, 70% of those businesses are going out of business. 70%. So you got 70% of the baby boomers and some of Generation X, and these businesses are going out of business on a daily basis because of lack of innovation, lack of marketing, and many of them don't have a retirement fund. Many of them don't have because they put all their money back in their business, back in their business, back in their business when they really haven't said, let me put 10% or 15%, whatever it is, into my retirement fund. And that's something that every business owner should stop and do right now.
Absolutely. And sometimes it could be daunting, right? To say, not only do I have to figure out everything in my business, but also my investments and retirement. And that's where I say, don't go it alone. Use a financial advisor, find someone that understands businesses. It is a little bit of a different realm when you're a business owner versus an employee, and even in terms of planning for your future. And that brings me to my third point: have a killer team. What do I mean by that? Not just your employees, but your financial team. And I believe it consists of at least three. Well, I'll say four because, having the exit strategist
And
is
that's me
important.
you bring in.
That's right. But the other three would be a really good attorney, because you will need it as a business owner in some capacity. A really good CPA, again, who understands businesses, and then the financial advisor. And that's the one I think people forget, because you're going to always have the CPA to file your taxes, and most businesses deal with some legalities that they have to put together early on in the business. But the financial advisor should come in also early on in the business, because they're the quarterback to your goals. They tie everything together. So who's communicating from the attorney to the CPA to your money? And then bringing it all back to what goals do you have, not only for your business, but also on a personal level. So having that killer team is so critical for the success of your business, whether it succeeds or fail. Well, I should say the success of your finances, whether your business succeeds or fails. And those that have it, the earlier on you can have it, the better it is. And that's something that I help people do every day, and it's a game changer.
And I'll add a caveat to that too, because I also say adding your M&A advisor, the right one, because there's a lot of them. M&A advisors, mostly M&A advisors, business brokers, just sell the business. They don't get the business ready for sale. And I always say you should, like Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. And I always say you should plan your business with the end in mind. You should plan the 360 GPS exit that we talk about in my book, Exit Rich. Determine your destination. Determine what that sales price is. You can change your mind along the way, because these clients are like, I don't know. It's like, pick a number. Say you want to sell for 20 million. Now you got a number. And if you want to decrease that or increase that, so what? It's your exit plan. And then you always need to know, what is your business worth today? And most business owners never get a valuation until they want to sell. And then they're quite disappointed that the valuation number is nowhere near what they would really like to sell their business for, or what they feel they need to retire on. So that's really, really important too, is to bring an M&A advisor in early. They can also talk to you about not just about planning your GPS exit, but where your numbers need to be to get to $20 million purchase price, and how to operate your business on all 6 Ps. So the more you plan, the better you always be. Like I always say, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
Yeah. I'm curious, Michelle, when do you typically advise a business to get an evaluation, not when they intend to sell, other than when they intend to sell?
Oh my gosh, early on. Like, we're working with clients right now that are 4 years out, 5 years out, 6 years out. And that's in our Road to Exit Rich plan, where we are really working with them, because here's what happens, Fradel, as they come to us and they say, okay, I want to sell my business for 20 million, and maybe their business is worth 5 million. And they want to do it in a year. Well, you're about 5 years out, And so the earlier they start planning and really, connect to what is their destination, what's their business worth today, where do their numbers need to be, what are the 6 Ps, what are the synergies they need to build in their company, then they'll have a much better success rate of getting the actual, wish price that they want to sell their company for, what they feel like it's worth. And business owners typically, when they tell me a number, they're not basing their number on the value of their business. They're basing their number on what they think they need to retire on, Fradel. They're like, I want to retire, and this is how much I need. And a lot of times that's not true. They don't need 20 million. And that's when we try to bring a financial advisor in. We'll go through the financials. How much do you need a month to live on? How much do you need a year? Well, who's your dependents, etc., and really start drilling down to see how much they need. But really, what we're working with clients to do is get all those 6 P's in place, because businesses will come to us and the business owner is doing all the jobs. The business owner is the business, and the business is completely reliable on the business. Even in large companies, you guys, we have a company we're selling where they have 350 employees, and the business owner is that business is dependent upon that owner. A buyer cannot come in and buy 100% of that company because they will never survive. So we really work with our business owners to try to work on the business, not in the business, and really have the right people in the right seats, right?
Yeah.
And then same thing with their processes. If their process is not buttoned up, or let's say Fradel, they're in a dying industry, and that industry is never going to come back. There's going to be AI, artificial intelligence, that's going to get rid of a lot of industries. So you really need to be on top of your business as it comes to the people, the product industry sector you're in, the processes, the proprietary assets, because that's what drives value. Your patrons, do you have customer concentration? Do you not have customer concentration? And are you turning profits?
Mm.
And we coach our business owners all the time. Make sure you get a financial advisor, and make sure you put so much away in savings in case another pandemic happens.
Right.
Or a hurricane.
Yeah. That's very valuable.
Yeah, so we always say start at the beginning. What other things that should business owners watch out for, or practice doing early? Or
Yeah, I think, I'll touch on this. This is where it comes into when you're in a partnership. This is another area that I think is overlooked, where when you're in I mean, there's so many areas in partnerships that you have to look out for, but one of them is what happens if something happens to one of the partners. And some business owners may have heard of a buy-sell agreement. And if you don't know what that is, it's a legal document that indicates what happens if one buyer wants to either buy the other one out, or something happens to one of the partners. But the thing that a lot of times I see business owners forget, even when they do have that document, is to fund it. Okay. So why does someone need that? Is when they are in a partnership. Okay. Because I'll paint the scenario. Imagine you have two business partners. Okay. Two male, business owners, and they're doing business great together. Let's just say both of them are married. Well, if one business owner dies, one partner dies, guess who is the new partner to that other business owner partner? The wife. Now, that wife may have been a stay-at-home mom, no business acumen, and quite frankly doesn't know anything about the business, and now is suddenly the new partner. Okay, that's the scenario of what if you don't have one. Okay, so, and there's many others. I mean, it doesn't have to be death. It could be disability. It could be many different things. So identifying a buy-sell agreement, which indicates what happens to buy out that other partner. How will that happen? What you need assets to buy it out. Now, most businesses don't just have cash sitting around to buy out the other partner. And so one of the ways to correctly set this up is through funding it with a life insurance policy, where premiums are paid on a policy, and that death benefit, which if it's properly set up will be tax-free, will go to buy out that other partner. So going back to that scenario we just discussed, now that spouse, that wife, gets, the death benefit. Let's just say it was $2 million, and that as a buyout, and that remaining partner now owns 100% of the business, where they can then bring on another partner or continue to run the organization on their own, as opposed to having major business disruption. And I've seen it ruin businesses too, because obviously when money comes into play and things are not clear, there could be a lot of fighting and disruption. So I think that that's another big one that I think businesses should look out for.
That's a huge one. That's a huge one. And you just kind of hit the nail on the head, because my spouse just passed away, unfortunately, unexpectedly. And he has businesses and he has a partner. And knowing what a good businessman that they were, my husband was, and his partner, The buy-sell agreements were not.
Wow.
And they were not updated. You got to update your buy-sell agreement. You need to make sure you sign the buy-sell agreement. And you need to keep all of that in place, right? You want to keep your articles of incorporation. You want to keep your buy-sell agreement updated. You want to make sure you keep all of your documents, and you want to make sure you keep them in a place that are easy to get to, because we had to go
Right.
searching for ours. And I hired an attorney, several years ago that's not
Wow.
even practicing anymore. So you really want to keep those updated, because it is so true, and it does cause headache, and it does cause frustration and tension between you and that partner when things are not clear, when things are not, updated, etc. And you want to make sure you have access to that at all times. And I can't stress that for businesses more than you can,
Yeah.
Fradel. But it is so imperative, because it will ruin a business. I've got some very good friends of mine. My best friend died, and her brother and sister-in-law are now in charge of the estate. Again, not a clear buy-sell agreement. That insurance that they had went to pay off the debt of the business.
Hmm.
They didn't have insurance to go to the surviving mother, brother, family members, etc. So there's two different types of insurance that we want to be crystal clear on. One is to pay off the debt. The other one is to go to the spouse.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
anything
And
else you want to share on
and
that?
that would actually be my next point is, proper protection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you mentioned a really good point where there's different purposes for different policies. Many
Mm-hmm.
times people think I have insurance, right? No one likes paying premiums. But what is the strategy around your insurance policy? Is there even one, right? Or is it like, oh, well, just in case I die, right? Every policy should have a strategy of what it's for.
Right.
And so when you're thinking about protection, you're thinking about not only business protection, so how do I protect the business in case something happens, but also how do I protect my other assets, and how do I protect my family if there is a family that you want to leave something to, or that will need an income replacement. So, for example, if there is a spouse and children and they live in a house and that house has a mortgage, well, if there's suddenly no income, does that mortgage get paid off, right? So that's one type of strategy. How
And
to
that could be a second mortgage that maybe the partner took out
correct.
on the
A lot
business.
of times people use actually their home equity for the business,
Right.
right? So there's just different areas that you really want to look at. And then lastly is if someone does have a big estate, utilizing that protection for the estate. So you build this huge business, Michelle helps you exit rich, right? And you have a great estate, but now how are you protecting yourself with estate planning? Where is a big chunk of that going to go to Uncle Sam when you pass away, or are you going to be able to pass on most of that? And a lot of that is through utilizing different types of trust, like an irrevocable life insurance trust, where that is now taken out of your estate and you have this tax-free death benefit along with some other policies that are not in a irrevocable trust that will go to then pay off the estate and probate taxes, and then you are left with whatever other assets you have. And I think that again, it's a lot to take in, right? I mean, we just mentioned like probably like 6 strategies in like a minute, but so this is where it goes back to having someone that you're sitting down with, and you don't need to figure all this out. You need to figure out what you want. What is your end game? Michelle, you talked earlier about thinking with the end in mind, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about the end. Let's talk about what you want. And if you can't see that far, okay, at least for now, what is it that you want? And then working backwards with an advisor and having them structure a plan of based on what your goals are, what do you need to do now to bridge the gap and get you as close as possible, with leaving in flexibility, with leaving in the ability to change if you change your mind, or if your business changes, or if your family dynamics change. So
Mm-hmm.
all those things are really important to be able to have as a discussion, to know that this is what the plan is, and then you're checking in, right? This is not like a one-time, okay, we set it and forget it. Just like you go to the doctor every year, do your taxes every year, you got to sit down with your advisors every year, whether it's your M&A advisor, financial advisor or anyone on your killer team, as I call it, to be able to get you set up for the best financial success that you can have as you create the best business that you have towards your vision.
Right. Yep. I agree. I could have said it better. And somebody just commented, make me put my glasses back on. Great info. So Kitty said, great info. So if anybody has any questions about what we're discussing today or comments, please feel free to just put your question in the chat box, put your comments. I'll read out all questions. So it is important stuff. And the biggest problem is business owners just usually wait till it's too late.
Yeah.
And then they have nothing to sell. And then they haven't started their retirement account, or they really haven't been consistent. The other thing is consistency. Really contributing to that account and really making sure that you're following the GPS exit model and building your business to exit rich and making sure what you're going to do with that money. Because at the end of the day, let's say I get you $50 million for your company, what's going to happen at $50 million? What do you actually walk away with? And there's different strategies for that too, if you want to talk about some of those strategies, Fradel.
Yeah, that's a good point, because now you've realized your dream, you exit. How is that going to help you live the life that you want? And I think that a lot of times the business owners that I've worked, they almost have like a sticker shock, right? Like, whoa, I have all this money. But money, if not properly managed, can be eaten up by expenses, taxes, and all the family members that think they're entitled to it, right? So that's really where having a strategy for post-sale, I think, is very important. And some of the things that are important to look at, I'm not going to get too detailed into product or strategy because it's very different, but some of the things to look at is income for the rest of your life, right? Like, how are you going to be supported? Some people, they go and start a new business or maybe use their expertise in consulting or whatever it might be, but can you use your business proceeds to create a guaranteed income for the rest of your life? So that gives you the freedom and flexibility to go do anything, regardless of what that will earn for you. The other thing is setting up proper trusts. I touched on that a little bit before, making sure that those things are set up. So legacy planning takes place there. And then, of course, tax planning. There's potentially a big tax bill when you're done with that sale. But
it's not a big tax bill. It's a gigantic, huge, enormous tax bill.
Only if you work with Michelle, because she'll help you set up everything.
We do that pre-planning, post-planning about 6 months. Usually when we take an engagement, we're starting that planning already because it's a process. And if you're into the LOI and you're about to prepare closing docs and you're headed to the closing table, then these strategies might not work for you because it's too late.
Yeah.
And there's reverse sales trust where you can, put the business in the trust and take money out with no taxes paid and invest it into other businesses, other real estate properties. And just take out, they do a risk assessment. It's their job to grow the business. I know Fradel knows about some of these strategies. And it's their job to continue to, not grow the business, but to continue to grow your portfolio and increase that money. So if you got a business that's sold for $50 million, it's her job to continue to grow that $50 million. And then you could take out, 6%, 8%, whatever you feel that you need to live on. And you're taxed on that piece. You're not taxed on the pieces that you take out to invest in other commercial real estate businesses, things of that nature, residential real estate, as long as it's not your own personal home.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
So you're familiar with those strategies. And so what else? What else should business owners be looking out for when it comes to their financial wherewithal in building their business? But most importantly, building that portfolio. I know that you got to watch out for if you've given some equity, if you've given some incentives when you sell the business. If you stay on, I pay you this. You really have to have all your ducks in a row and remember who you made your promises to, because that's going to come out of the proceeds as well.
Exactly.
So here's a question from Kenny. How can I set up the Rockefeller method?
I'm not quite sure specifically the Rockefeller. I know I've read a book on it. If you want to expand on that question, but one of the things I will say is that there's a lot of stuff out there, right? I mean, You can even go on TikTok at any moment and people are talking. And a lot of it is
Dancing
buzzwords.
and talking.
Yeah, dancing too, right? um, there's a lot of stuff, and one of the things you got to understand is, one, who's saying it. I mean, you look at someone like Michelle. She's written 3 books on the topic. She's helped so many businesses. I mean, I don't even know the exact number, but probably hundreds of millions of dollars in sale to the business owner, right? To money that went to the business owner. Who is actually giving you that information is really important. But what's even more important is, are you the right candidate for that? I have all the time people come to me and they say, hey, I want to set up a trust. And they have no clue why. I just heard it on TikTok. I said, but like, what does it have to do with you, right? How will it help you? Or they'll say, I want to do infinite banking, right? That's like a buzzword right now, infinite banking, where it's you take a certain type of life insurance policy that has cash value and you utilize it as a bank for your needs. Many people use it for real estate, but they have no idea that that actually comes with buying life insurance, right? They just think it's, oh, I'll have money, tax-free, interest-free, So, I would challenge all the listeners to, number one, knowledge is power, but knowledge is power if you apply it in the right way, not just knowing things and not just listening to everything. But if you find a topic that interests you, try to find someone who, one, has experience in that field, has dealt with people that live, right, that actually help people do it. If there's licenses needed, like I know in our industry there are, make sure that they're properly licensed. And also make sure that they know your goals. They have your goals in mind. I'll share a funny story. So I once had a client who we set up a type of plan that involved life insurance and also a savings component to that. And she calls me one day and she said, hey, I was just on the Susie Orman show. And I said, oh, really? Okay, that's great. And for those of you who don't know Susie Orman, she's extremely against permanent life insurance of any sort, which the policy that the client got was a permanent policy. And I said, okay, great. Well, like, how did that go? And she said, well, my friend is a producer on the show, and she told me to call in because she knew I just bought life insurance, and they were having a session about that. And when she got to talking to Susie Orman, Susie said, what kind of policy do you have? And she named the policy, and she started just going off. Like, this is the worst thing you can do. Don't ever buy it. And I said, okay. And my client's like, I'm just a little conflicted because obviously I know you suggested that I get this, but Susie Orman told me that it's the worst thing I can ever do. And I said, I just want to ask you one question. What does Susie Orman know about you? Like, what did she ask you about you? Does she know about your family situation, your goals, your current financials? And she says, she doesn't know anything. I mean, we didn't discuss that. She just knew what kind of policy I have. And I said, well, then how can she tell you what's right or wrong? And that's really the point, is that everyone is in a different financial situation. It's not a one size fits all. People have different scenarios, whether you're a business owner, you're an individual, you have a family, you're at different stages of your life. It's different for different people. And that's why it's important to, wherever you're getting that from, that it fits for you, meaning that person that's giving the advice understands where you're coming from, where you're going, and what your goals are and your financial situation. And that's when you can then assess what are the right strategies, what are the right products, where you can have options, and then you decide what makes sense for you. But I think that that's really the starting point, is understanding where you're at currently and where you're going, so that it could be appropriate in any capacity.
Yeah, because it's not one size fits all, number one. And number two, even when you go and research something that you've heard, you got to also make sure you do your due diligence on that person because a lot of people get paid, to speak on stage and to write books, and they throw a theory out there, but they really don't have any real life experiences in carrying that through. They don't really. Look, I've met a lot of people who speak on stage and say they can do this and this and this, and they never perform. So
Yeah.
you got to do your due diligence, talk to their existing clients. But Kenny says having whole life insurance on all family members and paying the proceeds into a family trust that continuously grows.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, how you set that up is you need an advisor, or at least someone who has a license in life insurance, and you need an attorney to set up the trust. The question you want to ask yourself is, do you need all that for your, depending on how much you plan to invest, right? If someone's doing a minimal amount, you don't necessarily need that whole structure. But if you're doing it at a large level, it could be very beneficial tax wise to pass down to the next generation. So I would say consult an advisor, someone like myself or another financial advisor that's familiar with those type of policies and structure. And then, of course, you'll need an attorney that is familiar with trusts to be able to set that up as well.
Okay. So that's something that you and your firm probably would not take on because it's not really your specialty, right?
Well, we do those type of plans, but we would have to bring in an attorney, which we have relationships with, or some people have their own attorneys to be able to set that up. So certainly that's something that we would be able to take care of.
Okay, cool. Good. Any other questions? Please chime in. What other advice do you have? Because I think we dropped some really good strategies and golden nuggets, and I do encourage people to go back and listen to this podcast because it is like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, we went over a lot of things today. Well, I just want to end with, if anyone does want to touch base with me or even just comment on what they learned, you can go to exitrichsurvey.com and just fill out the survey. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, I
Or if
love
there's
that. We
any,
have an Exit Rich survey that you
you
created
do, yeah.
for Exit Rich. I love that for my
Exit
book.
Rich Survey.
Yeah, is that what you guys do, or did you just make it special for this podcast?
No, I made it for this podcast.
I love it. See,
I know our listeners are going to have a lot of things to say, so I want to hear it.
Any other advice? And repeat that again. What are
So
they going to
exitrichsurvey.com
Yeah.
to get in touch with me or just to comment on the things that
Now
you
you're gonna
learned
have to
today.
sell me back that .com. You're gonna have to give me that .com.
Okay.
Especially since I own Exit Rich.
Absolutely.
You have to give me that .com now. But yes, I mean, go back and listen. Any other words of wisdom? I know you have so many. You've been in this industry. I think really it's important to tell listeners there's so many different financial advisors out there, right? It's kind of like attorneys. It's kind of like CPAs. You got to do your due diligence. But what really separates you? I know your passion is working with entrepreneurs, but what really separates you from everybody else? I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, my first road and career road was design, right? And from a creative perspective, I think that I put that into the financial side as well,
Mhm.
not thinking everything from a cookie cutter perspective, thinking of ideas that are outside the box and taking the products and services that exist in the marketplace and seeing how they can fit into those unique strategies. The other part to it is that creating strategic relationships, like people like yourself, Michelle, where I'm the quarterback, right? I want to be that person, and I am that person for the clients. That there's some things that I don't do, right? I don't do mergers and acquisitions. But when I have a client that comes to me that says, "Hey, I need to sell my business," I know the right people, right? And I have relationships with the right people where I can say, "Okay, I'm going to get you in front of the right person. We'll make it happen in the best way possible."
Mhm.
And so I think that that's a big differentiator. And lastly is most of our industry tends to want to work with the top 5-10%, the high net worth individual, the one that has millions of dollars to invest. And while I have plenty of clients like those, one of the things that our firm specializes in working with anyone. If you want to better your financial situation, you want to save money, you want to be able to get ahead financially, we offer financial education. We offer the ability to sit down with an advisor and be able to get that strategy early on, not necessarily having to have that high net worth to be able to get that that one-on-one attention.
Well, that high net worth did not start high, did it?
Exactly. Exactly.
Unless you inherited it. It
Yeah,
did not
which
start that way.
that's right. Everybody started somewhere, and that's where I come from, right? I mean, I didn't have money to even pay for my licenses when I first started, So I completely understand that, and I appreciate the ones that are on the way, right? And it's great to work with people that really want to make it, and they're willing to do the things needed, not just only for their business, but also for their savings, their retirement, their future, and they want some hand holding to be able to get that done. So that's where we specialize. We also help people become financial advisors and licensed professionals in this industry. That's one of my favorite things that I do, is help train people and help them get licensed and things of that nature. So that's an exciting
And it's
part of
not an
my
easy
day-to-day.
license to get. It's not an easy license to get.
Right. Yeah,
So that's amazing. So now, do you work with individuals or are you just working with businesses?
both, both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
personally work with a lot of business owners, but my team handles all sorts of clients.
And you have 350 financial advisors on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That separates you too, because a lot of financial advisors don't have that. And are you a fiduciary? A fiduciary?
Yeah, I am. Not all of our financial professionals are fiduciaries. Some of them are only insurance licensed. Some of them are. So just depending on the client, we match it up with the right fit.
Why don't you explain to our listeners why it's important to have a fiduciary versus a non-fiduciary?
Yeah, a fiduciary is someone who, per regulations, has to do what's in your best interest, which hopefully
Not what
anyone.
you get paid the most on.
What's that? Right now, when you
You
get
get
paid,
paid the most on, right? So it's
exactly.
in your client's best interest, not what you get paid the most on. Right.
Exactly. And so there's a separation in terms of licenses that are needed, but also the responsibility that you have with handling a client's funds and advice.
Okay, great, great, great. So I think everybody should get started. If you're an individual, if you're, there's a lot of listeners that are startups. There are a lot of our listeners that have a small business that work from home. And then we have mid-sized and larger companies as well. And we have some individuals that want to get into business. I think everybody should start with a financial advisor for sure, because it's compound interest, right? So let's just say you start with $100 a month or 1,000, whatever that number is, it compounds, right?
Exactly.
So,
And that's where the earlier you start, the better off you are,
yeah,
because your money has more time to double.
exactly. And that's why I've already started with my daughter. And then she's, so that's another thing, is that you want to open up
Yeah,
an account for your children that will help pay for college and things they need for college, right?
exactly. And even
And
thinking beyond college, I
yeah,
have 4 kids. They all have, I call a life account, right? I want to build for whether it's college, whether it's starting a business, maybe it's buying their
acquiring a
first home.
business.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
acquiring a
acquiring
business.
one. Yeah, I mean, nowadays, who knows what college is going to be in 20 years? I don't know. Like, it could be irrelevant at the rate we're going, or maybe they want to become a professor. It's have that compound interest starting day one is such a
Yeah,
big
we
difference.
started when my daughter was 2, so she's got
Yeah,
quite a bit of money in there already, and all the birthday money goes in there
yeah.
too. But I think the biggest key is consistency, because a lot of people will
Mhm.
get started and then they forget about it and they're not consistent. I think it's good to
Absolutely.
have it, set up to your EFTs, electronic funds
Like
transfer, your
automated.
ACH. They call it ACH now, or it can
Yeah.
come right out of your bank, and it's very important. I have business partners that do that. They have an automatic ACH that's 10% for savings, and we'll have 10% for investment, and
Hmm.
then we'll have 10% for nonprofit. Which brings me to the next point: is let's talk a little bit about your nonprofit while we still have time, because nonprofits is a write-off. I mean, you can donate to nonprofits, and it is a business write-off. And I know many business owners are always looking for write-offs.
Yeah. I think aligning yourself with something that has a lot of passion to either your company or just individually.
It
You
can be
know,
your
uh,
nonprofit, or you can align yourself with a nonprofit that you
correct.
feel
Yeah, it
is.
doesn't have to be yours. I mean, we've done fundraising, like not fundraising, but a fundraiser event. Like one of the events I hold is called Women and Wealth, and we do educational. It's geared towards women, financial education. It has a networking component, a lot of fun. But one of the things we've done is also work with a nonprofit that gives money towards different women's needs. Like one year we did it where it was in women in in emerging countries that didn't have businesses, that were trying to make their own business, and all the proceeds of the ticket sales, we gave that to that organization. And again, and we matched the whatever the ticket sales were, right? So our donation was our tax write-off, but each of the attendees also got a write-off for their own self, right? Whatever money that they put in there as well. So it could also be from a corporate social responsibility standpoint. There's a lot of ways to be able to obviously help the world and change the world, but at the same time also financially, it does impact your business as well.
Wonderful. And so what does your nonprofit do? You have your own nonprofit, or you have
No,
one?
I'm it's just a board member. It's not my
Okay.
own, but it creates orphanages and schools in third world countries.
Wonderful. So that's a
Yeah.
wonderful charity. All right. So anything else you would like to share with
That
the
wraps it
audience?
up. I think this was a great conversation. Hopefully, all the listeners got a lot of value, and thank you so much for listening in. And we'd love to
Absolutely.
connect with you all.
So thank you for coming on the show, Fradel. You dropped a lot of golden nuggets. The chapters in Exit Rich are called golden nuggets. So we dropped a lot of golden nuggets, a lot of good strategies. I think everybody should get started now. People always say, I'm going to start, but
Yeah,
I'm going to start when. And you
that's
know
right.
what? The but just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
And,
So
and time's not waiting for anybody.
it's too heavy to carry around. And you can't pay for it. So you really need to get started now. So reach out to Fradel and connect with her. Do your due diligence. Find the right team, like she said, the right attorney, the right CPA, the right M&A advisor, and the right financial advisor. So thank you again for being on the show. Thank you, Kenny, for your comments and questions. Thanks to all of our listeners for listening. And we'll see you next Wednesday when we have another episode of Exit Rich. Thank you so much. And I
Thanks for
know you
having me.
guys love this podcast. So share it with your network, share it with your influencers, share it with your colleagues, fellow entrepreneurs, people at work. Get the podcast out there so more and more people can learn about financial literacy, and we can make the economy stronger and stronger in the United States. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.